pop over to the work you've done on some of the popular music stuff, particularly like the stuff that you were doing with Prince. Um, that I guess that was probably a very interesting gig because Prince's musical sensibilities were not the standard. He yeah
He
he was
wasn't standard at all.
yeah,
I mean,
at all. He was, he had a lot of he pulled from a lot of different sources.
yeah.
So in your work with that group, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a player and as an arranger in that situation, and like what were some of the big takeaways you got from it?
Every day was a challenge. I mean, he loved to push your limits and see like he would everything he asked for seemed like it was totally out of the box. I was like, what? No one's ever asked me to do that before. Just the long days too, like his flow, like he could just go and go and go and never get tired. So keeping up with him was a challenge. And he was so focused too in rehearsals. He could just he could just focus for hours and hours and hours, and he was really nice, but he was intense. Not like intense just in the sense of like, you know, just a really hard worker. And just there were times where it would just be Prince and myself like dialoguing for hours, day after day after day, while the whole 20-piece band just sat in silence and waited to be told what to do. I was the horn arranger, so he was working out arrangements with me, and I felt like I had to match his intensity, and and I thought we were great together. I thought we worked really great together. I didn't want to disappoint him in any way,
Yeah.
professionally, and so I never wanted to show any kind of weakness. If I didn't understand what he was saying, it's delicate. You're dealing with a rock star. You don't want to offend them. And I'd heard a lot of Prince stories, so I was not walking on eggshells, but I was just trying to be like really mindful about how I communicated with him. And a lot of times he would say something that I didn't really quite understand what he was getting at, and so I would just give him a look like, and he knew like I didn't understand, and then he would explain it again, and I just keep giving him that look until I was like, oh, okay, got you. All right.
Yeah.
But I never once was like, what? What do you mean? 'Cause, you don't want to say that to your boss. I just tried to match his level of intensity and like just workflow, work ethic, and intelligence, and that was the hardest part because I'm certainly not as intelligent as Prince, but he was so quick and funny and just on it. But musically, I felt like we were well matched because I mean, horns are my wheelhouse, but horns are his wheelhouse as well. But he knew that I was a specialist, and that's why he hired me. Even though he can write horns, he's an incredible arranger, and he knows what he wants. But he also wanted someone like me that took it to the next level, so he
Right.
could say, "Hey, write a feature here that just like go crazy," you know. And that's Michael B. Nelson is another one. He was Prince's horn arranger for years, and he would say the same thing. Prince loved to have people who were experts at certain things. That would just elevate the whole thing.
Hmm.
He recognized that, and he respected. If he respected you musically, it was almost like you were equals.
Hmm.
You know, I could interject and like add, make suggestions and things like that. And he was always open. He would always say things like, he'd make a suggestion, and he'd be like, "Let's hear it." Like, I thought that was a really humble thing to say because he's Prince. He could just be like, "No, I don't. That's not gonna. I don't think that's gonna sound good." You know.
Yeah.
But he would be like, "Well, let's hear it." I don't know. I won't know until I hear it. Let's try it. So everything was like an experiment. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and that is a real cool thing, and I mean, in reality, that's probably the way it should be,
Yeah,
because
indeed.
you know what you know, but you don't know what other people know,
Yeah,
and your idea might be great, your idea might be complete crap, but we're not going to know until we try it out, and
yeah,
and if the end game is to produce a product that is the highest quality, the highest caliber product,
yeah,
then to not want to utilize an idea because it isn't yours, that that's not being your best self.
right,
So
right.
but that's definitely cool. So I had a question, just one other question about Prince, and we're going to get off this subject. Because I don't know, so I want to ask you. I know he was a tremendous musician. I mean, his ability to play, you know, pretty much anything he wanted to play. Um, but was he like a trained musician? I mean, like, did he read and did he write and things like that, or was he just kind of the self taught natural?
Self-taught natural, um, and he really respected people who could read music, though. He was way into it. But I think, he knew that that wasn't going to be his thing. It didn't need to be his thing.
Right.
Um, but um, but I think that's also what made him so great, was that like he was so out of the box. He wasn't thinking in terms of what what's possible. He was
Hmm.
just like, or rules or theory, or
Right.
he would sit on the piano sometimes and just like play the coolest stuff I ever heard. And then other times he'd sit down and like be completely lost and couldn't remember what the song, how something went, because he wasn't thinking, he was feeling.
Hmm.
He was feeling his way. And piano wasn't his main instrument, and he never sounded bad a day in his life on the guitar. But like I remember there were times with the piano where it was like, oh, I can't remember what this was, man. He was fishing around. I'm like, what are you playing? What are you trying to play? I have no idea. He's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was all like, it was all feel at the piano, or just in general. But then he would play the coolest stuff on piano sometimes. I'm like, wow, I've never heard anything like that before.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
and
that's
he,
really cool. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I
he
think
was
it's
so
kind of like that
talented.
yin yang thing. It's like the theory and the training gives us a foundation to work with, and a way of communicating. I think I'm sure your communication would have been different. If he said something like, "Okay, when we get to the subdominant, then we want to use this kind of voice leading and blah blah blah." Then okay, yeah, 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 sure, sure, I understand that. So sometimes we speak different languages when you're trying to speak the standardized language of music
Yeah,
and the expressive language of music. Um, but while the theory and the structure give us something to work with, a foundation, it sometimes can box us in, and we're too busy thinking about, like you're saying, the rules and stuff like that, and not about the
yeah,
possibilities.
yeah. That's why I like to make myself write in keys that I'm less familiar with, so that I'm kind of feeling my way through and not thinking too much. If I write When I write in keys that I'm really familiar in, sometimes there's way too much thinking,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So when you write, yeah, I know people like for horns. When you're writing at a horn chart, are you doing it more from keyboard perspective, like sitting there voicing things on the keyboard? Are you doing it from, like, using your horn as the main reference point, or what's your typical process?
I try to do most things by ear now, and I play a lot of keyboards, and I have like a lot of voicings in my head and stuff. But usually nowadays, I just use my horn and I play parts in, and do almost everything by ear. Now, if I'm doing working with like a really large horn section with some like really big spreads, or like a big band kind of thing, then I'll lean on the piano a little heavier for that,
Hmm.
because it just gets more complex. But when it comes to like a 5-piece horn section, I can write that stuff without a piano because I've done so much of it,
Yeah.
through the years. And so I can quickly access all of those kind of voicings. Um, yeah. I think it's good, like, to get out of the thinking and just the feeling.